The introduction. An ambassador and a cultural clash. Ambassador Lithos of the Crystalline Alliance stepped off his sparkling crystal shuttle onto humanity's newest diplomatic station, Earth 2.0. His 7-foot frame, shimmering with luminescent crystals, moved with the kind of unflappable confidence that only comes from 400 years of flawless negotiations. His mission was to establish peaceful diplomatic relations with humanity, a species known for its unpredictability and emotional tendencies. Instead of a suave diplomat, he was met by Commander John Jack Carter, a man who looked like he'd been personally assembled from the spare parts of every action movie hero ever created. 6 feet of pure earth-grown muscle was stuffed into a dress uniform that had clearly seen better days. Jack had the kind of smile that made career diplomats nervous and a handshake that could crack walnuts. Ambassador Lithos, welcome to Earth 2.0, Jack boomed, his voice echoing off the sterile walls of the docking bay. I hope you brought your appetite, because we've got one hell of a welcome feast planned for you. Lithos's perfectly symmetrical crystals arranged themselves into what the crystalline considered a polite expression, though it looked more like someone had just informed him of a mild paperwork error. Commander Carter, I appreciate the gesture, but my alliance requires only basic nutritional sustenance during diplomatic functions. A simple nutrient cube will suffice. Jack's grin broadened in a way that should have been classified as a diplomatic warning. A nutrient cube? Oh buddy, you haven't lived until you've experienced real human cuisine. We're talking a full Earth experience here. We've got a full menu of traditional Vietnamese dishes like BNH, PH, and BNHM, all the way to CMTM. My grandmother's secret recipe for CMTM with grilled pork ribs, marinated with lemongrass and chili, served with the delicious egg quiche and sweet fish sauce, will make you feel alive again. The concept of feeling alive and the emotional language Jack used caused Lithos to take an involuntary step backward. The crystalline were genetically engineered for physical perfection, which apparently included being as unemotional as a polished marble statue and only consuming calculated nutritional compounds to maintain optimal biological function. Commander Carter, I believe there may be some cultural misunderstanding, Lithos said. The crystalline do not consume food for pleasure. We consume calculated nutritional compounds designed to maintain optimal biological function. Right. Jack nodded sagely, completely missing the point. That's exactly why you need this feast. You've been living on space rations for centuries. Time to discover what you've been missing. Trust me, after tonight, you'll never look at a nutrient cube the same way again. As they walked through the corridors of Earth 2.0, Lithos began to suspect that this assignment might not go as smoothly as his previous 400 successful negotiations. The humans had decorated the station with what they called welcoming touches, which apparently included the overwhelming scent of sizzling grilled pork ribs wafting through the ventilation system. Is that aroma intentional? Lithos asked, his voice carrying just a hint of concern. That's just the kitchen getting warmed up, Jack replied cheerfully. Wait until you smell the main courses. The feast of life. 20 minutes later, Lithos found himself seated in what Jack proudly called the diplomat dining hall, though it looked more like someone had taken a 5-star restaurant and landed it inside a space station. The tables were actually set with cloth napkins, real silverware, and what appeared to be small controlled fires in glass containers that Jack referred to as ambience. So, Jack said, settling into his chair with the enthusiasm of a man about to testify history. Let me walk you through tonight's menu. We've got representatives from all of Earth's major culinary traditions because we figured, hey, if we're going to blow your mind, we might as well do it properly. Acolyte Pip, a nervous junior diplomat who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the known galaxy, frantically scribbled notes on his quantum tablet. Pip had the unfortunate job of documenting everything for the Galactic Council, which meant he was essentially creating evidence for what was starting to look like humanity's first major diplomatic incident. First up, Jack continued, gesturing toward the kitchen doors like a game show host revealing prizes. We've got authentic CMTM with grilled pork ribs. That's ribs that have been grilled over an open fire, marinated with lemongrass, chili, and a bunch of secret spices. The sauce alone has ingredients I can't pronounce, but trust me, it's worth potentially starting a small war over. Lithas's perfectly engineered facial features manage to convey confusion, horror, and diplomatic concerns all at the same time. You grill dead animals and then cover them with unidentifiable substances? Oh, that's just the beginning, Jack said, warming to his subject like a man describing his favorite hobby. Then we've got PHB that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the relationship between taste and spirit. It's got enough herbs to power a small spacecraft, a broth that's basically liquid silk, and sliced meat. So perfect, it's practical art. Pip's stylus was moving so fast across his tablet it was creating small friction burns. He was pretty sure he was documenting humanity's first attempt at biological warfare through cuisine, and he wanted to make sure the Galactic Council had all the evidence they'd need for the inevitable war crimes tribunal. Moving on to the Thai food station, Jack continued obliviously. We've got GIU with lime, chili, and peanuts. The chili is so hot, it'll feel like a small lightning bolt on your tongue, but you won't want to stop. That's what we call liquid happiness. You add dairy products to vegetables? Lithas asked weakly. The crystalline had eliminated lactose intolerance along with every other biological inconvenience for centuries ago. But they'd also eliminated the concept of dairy products entirely. And for our grand finale, Jack said, building to what he clearly considered the crescendo of human culinary achievement, we've got to try NC with ginger. Now, this might be a little sweet and hot for a first-timer. The ginger can be hotter than a lightning bolt, but hey, we're all friends here, right? Lithas looked at Pip, who had stopped writing entirely, and was staring at Jack with the kind of expression usually reserved for watching natural disasters unfold in slow motion. Hotter than a lightning bolt, Pip whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Plus, we've got BNHM, GI Kun, and for dessert, my personal favorite, BNH flan with caramel sauce and fresh strawberries. Jack sat back in his chair, clearly proud of himself. So, Ambassador, ready to discover what you've been missing for the last 4 centuries? Lithas stared at the human across from him and realized that in all his years of diplomatic service, through wars, trade disputes, and territorial negotiations, he had never encountered anything quite this terrifying. BNHM and rebirth. The first course arrived with what Jack called ceremony, but what Lithas could only describe as barely controlled chaos. Human staff members emerged from the kitchen carrying platters that seemed to defy several laws of physics, particularly the ones governing how much food could reasonably fit on a single plate. We'll start you off easy, Jack announced, placing what he called BNHM in front of Lithas. This is a basic baguette. Can't get much simpler than that. Lithas examined the golden brown object with the careful attention of a bomb disposal expert. It was warm, which was already suspicious, since crystalline nutrition cubes were always served at exactly room temperature. Worse, it was emitting some sort of aromatic vapor that his perfectly calibrated olfactory sensors couldn't quite categorize. It appears to be releasing gaseous compounds, Lithas observed. That's the yeast, Jack explained helpfully, and the butter. Speaking of which, he produced a small ceramic container filled with what looked like yellow paste. This is butter. It's basically concentrated cow happiness. Cow happiness? Lithas repeated faintly. It's a figure of speech. Just try it. Against his better judgment and 4 centuries of diplomatic training, Lithas took a small, cautious bite of the buttered baguette. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. His perfectly regulated nervous system, designed to process only the most basic nutritional inputs, suddenly found itself dealing with concepts like flavor and texture and actually enjoying food. Oh, Lithas said, his voice carrying a note of surprise that hadn't been heard from a crystalline diplomat in recorded history. Oh my, good, right? Jack grinned. Wait until you try it with the honey butter. There's more, Lithas asked. then immediately took another bite before anyone could answer. Somewhere in the back of his mind, his diplomatic trainer was screaming warnings about cultural contamination and loss of professional composure. But that voice was being rapidly drowned out by the revolutionary discovery that food could taste like something other than cardboard. Pip watched in growing horror as his superior, the most rigid and protocol-obsessed diplomat in the Crystalline Alliance, took a third bite of the baguette with what could only be described as enthusiasm. "Ambassador," he whispered urgently, "perhaps we should document the ingredients for potential toxicity analysis." "Documentation can wait," Lythos said, waving him off with the casual dismissal of someone who had just discovered religion. "Jack, what did you call this yellow substance again?" "Butter. And that's just regular butter. Wait until you try the garlic butter with the garlic breadsticks." The garlic breadsticks arrived moments later, and with them came Lithos's first encounter with the concept of seconds. In crystalline culture, you consumed exactly the amount of nutrition your body required. No more, no less. The idea of eating something simply because it tasted good was not just foreign, was practically heretical. "I believe," Lythos said carefully, "that I may require additional bread products." Jack's grin could have powered the station's main reactor. "Now you're talking," Jack said. "Maria, bring out the focaccia." As the parade of bread products continued, Lythos found himself engaging in increasingly undignified behavior. He was making small sounds of appreciation that his vocal cords had never been designed to produce. He was asking questions like, "What makes this one different from that one? And is it possible to obtain the recipe for this?" Most alarming of all, he had loosened the ceremonial collar of his diplomatic robes. "Ambassador," Pip tried again, his voice taking on a note of genuine panic. "The Galactic Council specifically instructed us to maintain proper dietary protocols during this mission." "The Galactic Council," Lythos replied, taking his fourth piece of focaccia, "has never experienced olive oil." It was at this moment that Jack decided to introduce the concept of appetizers, and Lithos's diplomatic career took a sharp turn toward the unprecedented. The mozzarella sticks alone caused what the station's medical scanner later described as unprecedented neurological activity in the ambassador's brain chemistry. "So," Jack said, watching with satisfaction as Lythos methodically worked his way through a plate of loaded potato skins. "Ready for the main courses?" Lythos looked up from what he was privately beginning to think of as the most important meal of his 400-year lifespan. "Jack," he said solemnly, "I believe I may have been living my entire existence incorrectly." Pip's stylus snapped in half. CMTM, and a world change. The main courses arrived like an invading army. Each dish was more aromatic and visually overwhelming than the last. Jack had clearly decided that subtlety was for species that hadn't spent for centuries eating flavorless nutrition cubes. So, he'd gone with what military strategists would call the shock and awe approach to international cuisine. "All right, Ambassador," Jack announced, gesturing toward the impressive array of steaming platters now covering every available inch of the table. "Time for the real show. We'll start with something mild. This is our CMTM with grilled pork ribs." Lythos, who had spent the last 20 minutes discovering that bread could be a religious experience, approached the grilled pork with the reverence of someone entering a sacred temple. He took a small, careful bite, chewed thoughtfully for exactly 3 seconds, and then his eyes broadened to approximately twice their normal size. "This," he said slowly, "this is meat that has been transformed into something approaching divinity." "That's just the appetizer version," Jack said proudly. "Wait until you try it with the fish sauce." The combination of grilled pork and fish sauce caused what could only be described as a complete system overload in Lithos's perfectly calibrated crystalline physiology. His normally rigid posture began to relax in ways that would have been scandalous back on his home planet. Worse, he was making small sounds of appreciation that sounded distinctly undignified. "Ambassador," Pip whispered frantically, "you're experiencing what the humans call food noises. This could be interpreted as a loss of diplomatic composure." "Pip," Lythos replied, not looking up from his plate. "Shut up and try the GI cunt." This was unprecedented. In 4 centuries of diplomatic service, Ambassador Lithos had never told anyone to shut up. He had never used contractions in formal speech, and he had definitely never suggested that his subordinate abandon protocol to sample what appeared to be vegetables wrapped in rice paper. But then Jack introduced the BNH, and all pretense of diplomatic dignity went out the airlock. Now this might have a little kick to it, Jack warned, ladling the BNH over jasmine rice noodles that smelled like they had been blessed by agricultural gods. The chef used authentic chili, but she went easy on you for your first time. Lithos took 1 spoonful of the BNH and experienced what human poets would have called a spiritual awakening, but what crystalline medical textbooks would have classified as acute sensory system dysfunction. The sweet and sour flavor of the sauce hit his nervous system like a carefully controlled explosion, followed by the fresh herbs and grilled meat smoothing everything out like diplomatic negotiations after a successful treaty signing. This is... Lithos paused, searching for words in a language that had never been designed to describe the experience of actual flavor. This is like someone figured out how to make a storm of flavors that doesn't kill you. Great description, Jack laughed. Try the BNHM next. It's got this rich and savory thing going on that'll blow your mind. The BNHM was Lithos's introduction to the concept of complex flavor profiles, which his species had never needed words for because they'd never encountered anything more complex than nutritionally adequate. The combination of meat, PT, fresh vegetables, and savory sauce created a symphony in his mouth that his brain kept trying to analyze and categorize, but which kept defying every system of classification he'd ever learned. Jack, Lithos said, his voice taking on a tone that Pip had never heard before. What did you call this? BNHM. Classic street food. You should try it with the chili. The addition of chili caused Lithos to make a sound that was somewhere between a diplomatic statement and what humans might recognize as a moan of pure pleasure. This was the moment that Pip realized he was no longer documenting a cultural exchange. He was witnessing the complete psychological transformation of the Galactic Council's most respected ambassador. Sir, Pip tried desperately. Perhaps we should pace ourselves. The humans have prepared many additional courses, and your system may not be designed to process this volume of sensory input. My system, Lithos announced, reaching for the try-and-see with the determination of someone who had just discovered the meaning of life, was clearly designed by idiots who had never encountered proper food. The try-and-see represented Lithos's first encounter with what Jack called handheld perfection. The concept of wrapping sweet rice cakes, ginger, and sugar in a small bowl and eating it with a spoon would have been considered barbaric by crystalline standards, except that it tasted like someone had figured out how to concentrate happiness into edible form. This is incredible, Lithos mumbled through a mouthful of ch. His careful diplomatic diction began to slur slightly. Why would anyone eat anything else when this exists? Wait until you try the BNH flan with caramel. Jack grinned, clearly enjoying watching a centuries-old alien civilization discover the joy of actual cuisine. But it was the dishes that followed that finally broke Ambassador Lithos completely. Jack had warned him that they might be a little spicy, which in retrospect, was like warning someone that a supernova might be a little bright. Lithos took one bite of a spicy dish, and his perfectly regulated body temperature spiked by several degrees, while his normally pale complexion turned an alarming shade of what humans would call sunset orange. Water, Lithos gasped. I require immediate hydration. Oh, water won't help with chili, Jack said cheerfully, passing him a glass of milk. Try this instead. The milk provided instant relief, which led to Lithos's discovery of dairy products and their magical properties. Within minutes, he had consumed 3 glasses of milk, discovered that ice cream existed, and was demanding to know why his species had never developed anything comparable. Jack, Lithos said, his voice now carrying what could only be described as evangelical fervor. I need you to understand something very important. Everything I thought I knew about existence has been fundamentally wrong. It was at this point that the station's communication system chimed with an incoming priority message from the Galactic Council, and Pip realized that his career was about to become very, very complicated. Conclusion: joy or danger? The holographic projection of the Galactic Council materialized in the dining hall with the kind of impeccable timing that only happens during maximum embarrassment scenarios. 12 alien species representing the most advanced civilizations in known space flickered to life, just as Ambassador Lythos was attempting to stuff an entire slice of BNH flan into his mouth, while simultaneously reaching for what Jack had described as CMTM with extra everything. Ambassador Lythos, came the stern voice of High Counselor Thexa, a crystalline being whose species communicates primarily through harmonic resonance and disapproval. We are receiving reports about your dietary activities. Lythos looked up from his BNH flan, caramel hanging from his chin in a way that would have been front-page scandal material in any crystalline publication, and waved cheerfully at the holographic assembly. Council, you have to try this food. Jack, tell them about the fish sauce. The collective silence from the 12 species was the kind of quiet that precedes either profound philosophical breakthroughs or interstellar wars. Pip, who had been frantically trying to clean up the disaster area that their table had become, simply put his head in his hands and began what sounded like a quiet prayer to whatever deity might help junior diplomat survive career-ending catastrophes. Fish sauce, Jack said helpfully, apparently oblivious to the fact that he was now addressing the most powerful political body in the galaxy, while an alien ambassador drooled caramel in the background, is basically a sauce made from fermented fish, sugar, and pure happiness. You can put it on anything. Watch this. He dipped a grilled pork rib in fish sauce and offered it to Lythos, who accepted it with the enthusiasm of someone who had found religion. Fish sauce, Lythos announced to the holographic council, is clearly the pinnacle of culinary achievement. I move that we immediately establish trade negotiations for Earth's fish sauce technology. High Counselor Thex's crystalline form pulsed with what those familiar with their species recognized as barely controlled horror. Ambassador, you appear to have sauce on your ceremonial robes. Multiple sauces, Lythos corrected proudly, gesturing toward his outfit, which now looked like a Jackson Pollock painting rendered in various earth condiments. There's fish sauce, some of that chili sauce, what I think is from the BNH flan dessert, and he paused to examine a particularly colorful stain, something Jack called mystery sauce from the spring rolls. The representative from the Valdoran Empire, a species known for their militant dedication to cleanliness, made a sound that their universal translators could only render as horrified chittering. Furthermore, Lythos continued, apparently just getting warmed up, I formally propose that we immediately reclassify Earth's food technology as a Class 1 strategic resource. The humans have weaponized flavor itself. Do you understand what this means for galactic civilization? Sir, Pip whispered urgently. Perhaps we should discuss this through proper diplomatic channels. Pip, Lythos interrupted, spinning around with the wild-eyed enthusiasm of someone who had consumed enough sugar and caffeine to power a small star system. Have you tried the BNH flan yet? Jack, bring Pip some BNH flan. The council needs to see this. I don't think that's... Jack began, but Lythos had already grabbed a fork and was advancing on his cultural attach with what appeared to be violent intentions regarding dessert. Ambassador Lythos, High Counselor Thex's harmonic resonance was now hitting frequencies that translated roughly to diplomatic crisis management mode. We are ordering you to cease this cultural contamination immediately. Cultural contamination, Lythos repeated, pausing with the fork full of BNH flan halfway to Pip's mouth. This isn't contamination. This is evolution. This is. He struggled for words, then turned to face the council with caramel smeared across his perfectly symmetrical features. This is the most important discovery in the history of a galactic civilization. The representative from the Hive Collective, a species that communicates through pheromone release and had never encountered individual food preferences, began emitting what their translator interpreted as confused alarm chemicals. Think about it. Lythos continued, beginning to pace around the dining hall with the manic energy of someone experiencing their first sugar rush. We've been living on flavorless nutrition cubes for centuries. Meanwhile, the humans have been over here turning simple ingredients into, he paused dramatically, gesturing toward the remains of their feast, into edible poetry. Ambassador, came the dry voice of Counselor Zephyr from the Logical Coalition. You are exhibiting behavior patterns consistent with chemical dependency. Dependency? Lithos laughed, a sound that would have been completely alien to anyone who had known him 24 hours earlier. If being dependent on actually enjoying your food is wrong, then I don't want to be right. Jack, more of those grilled pork ribs. Ambassador, Jack said, finally beginning to sense that something might be going seriously sideways. Maybe we should pace ourselves. Pace ourselves? Lithos spun around, his eyes gleaming with the fervor of a convert. Jack, my friend, you don't understand. I've spent 400 years eating the same flavorless, perfectly balanced nutrition cubes. 400 years. And now you show me BNH and CMTM and something called BNHM. And you want me to pace myself? He turned back to the holographic council, spreading his arms wide in a gesture that would have been considered theatrically inappropriate by crystalline standards. I challenge any of you to try what the humans call CMTM, and then tell me we should go back to our boring, flavorless existence. That's it. High Counselor Thexa announced, their harmonic frequencies shifting into what was unmistakably emergency diplomatic protocol mode. We are implementing immediate containment procedures. Ambassador Lithos, you are hereby relieved of duty pending psychological evaluation. You can relieve me of duty, Lithos declared, grabbing another slice of BNH flan with the defiance of someone making a stand for everything they believed in. But you cannot take away the memory of fish sauce. It was at this moment that Jack finally realized he might have accidentally started the galaxy's first food war. The aftermath. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 47 minutes after what would later be referred to in official documents as the CMTM incident. Representatives from all 12 major civilizations gathered in holographic formation, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of concerning chittering, harmonic resonance, pheromone clouds, and what the universal translators diplomatically rendered as expressions of profound dismay. Ambassador Lithos, meanwhile, was in the station's medical bay, being gently restrained by 3 human medics while he attempted to negotiate for just one more slice of BNH flan, and loudly proclaimed that fish sauce was the closest thing to liquid perfection that has ever existed in this or any other galaxy. The motion before us, High Counselor Thexa announced, their crystalline form pulsing with the kind of authority that had kept galactic peace for over 2 millennia, is the immediate classification of all Earth-based food products as Class 7 cultural contamination hazards, with complete prohibition from all future diplomatic functions. The vote was unanimous. 12 civilizations representing billions of beings across hundreds of star systems agreed on something for the first time in recorded history. Human food was too dangerous to exist in polite galactic society. Furthermore, continued Counselor Zephyr from the Logical Coalition, we hereby establish the Carter Protocol, prohibiting any future diplomatic contact involving Earth cuisine, effective immediately. Jack, who had been listening to the proceedings from the medical bay, where he was keeping Lithos company, looked up from the tablet where he'd been taking notes for his after-action report. They named a protocol after me. A prohibition protocol, Pip clarified weakly. The junior diplomat had spent the last hour attempting to calculate how badly this would affect his career prospects, and had concluded that catastrophically was probably optimistic. It still counts, Jack snapped. How's our patient doing? Ambassador Lithos, who had finally been sedated enough to stop demanding more grilled pork ribs, was lying on the medical bed with what the human doctors were calling the most contented expression they've ever seen on an alien face. Even unconscious, he was smiling and occasionally mumbling things like BNH flan perfection and CMTM revolution. The official medical report filed 6 hours later would describe Lithos's condition as acute flavor addiction with complications of sugar intoxication and what appears to be the first recorded case of interspecies food euphoria. The recommended treatment was a gradual reintroduction to bland nutrition cubes, with possible counseling for emotional attachment to condiments. But the real consequences wouldn't become apparent until 3 weeks later, when Ambassador Lithos was quietly reassigned to Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7, a lonely outpost on the edge of the galaxy, where the only other intelligent life was a maintenance robot named Bob and the occasional passing asteroid. It was there, in his official reports to the Galactic Council, that Lithos began what historians would later recognize as the most comprehensive and completely unauthorized documentation of human food culture ever compiled by a non-human entity. His daily communications became increasingly unhinged love letters to Earth cuisine, featuring detailed descriptions of dishes he'd only experienced once, but remembered with the clarity of religious visions. Report 1-247. Read 1 typical transmission. I have been analyzing the structural composition of what humans call CMTM, and have concluded that the combination of rice, grilled pork, quiche, and fish sauce represents a level of culinary engineering that surpasses our greatest technological achievements. I formally request permission to return to Earth for further research into what they call fish sauce variants. These requests were uniformly denied. Report 1-851. Today, attempted to recreate what humans call BNG seasoning using available station supplies. The result was unsuccessful, but has given me new appreciation for human spice technology. I believe they may have achieved practical alchemy. By Report 2003, Lithos had begun designing theoretical trade agreements between the Crystalline Alliance and Earth, based entirely around condiment exchanges. By Report 2-847, he was submitting formal proposals for establishing what he called flavor research stations throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council stopped reading his reports after Report 3000, when he submitted a 4,000-word analysis of why fish sauce represents the evolutionary apex of fermented-based sauce technology. Meanwhile, back on Earth 2.0, Commander Jack Carter found himself in the peculiar position of being simultaneously promoted for innovative diplomatic outreach and permanently banned from participating in any future first contact scenarios involving food service. So, his replacement, Commander Sarah Williams, asked during the transition briefing, "Any advice for dealing with our next alien delegation?" Jack looked out the observation deck at the stars, thinking about Ambassador Lithos somewhere out there on his monitoring station, probably still dreaming about grilled pork ribs and BNH flan. "Yeah," he said finally. "Start with something simple. Maybe just serve water. Water? Trust me on this one." The irony, of course, was that Jack's next assignment would be as Earth's first culinary cultural exchange officer, a position that had been created specifically to keep him as far away from actual negotiations as possible. His job would be to document Earth's food cultures for the theoretical day, when the galaxy might be ready to handle them responsibly. That day, according to current Galactic Council projections, was approximately 700 years in the future. In the meantime, somewhere on Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7, former Ambassador Lithos continues filing his reports, maintaining his vigil at the edge of known space and dreaming of the day when the galaxy will be ready to embrace what he still considers humanity's greatest gift to the universe: the revolutionary concept that food could actually taste good. His final log entry, recorded exactly 1 year after the CMTM incident, contained just 7 words: "Worth it. Would absolutely do again. Fish sauce forever." The Galactic Council classifies that report as a Class 7 cultural contamination hazard and locked it away in their deepest archives, where it remains to this day, a testament to humanity's most dangerous weapon: really, really good food.